Today we go over 17 random Fire Emblem facts, one for each mainline Fire Emblem game. Why? Because I am a trivia fiend. Whether it's a tidbit from a developer interview, sales performances, a dropped idea, unused content, a fun story bit, or something gameplay related, I set out to learn more about the series that I love, and I want to shed light on some lesser known facts that I've learned myself over the years, and what I learned writing this video. Instead of starting from FE1, I'm going to start with Engage and then work my way down. Some of you, if you've been following my channel, will know these already, but others, if you're relatively new, you might not have watched a video where I covered it before. But I myself have learned quite a bit of new Fire Emblem trivia that I think you guys would enjoy too. Now let's get started. Engage. Kagetsu is from a faraway kingdom in Solm called Pale Sands. This area is never visited in-game, but we actually do know where his home is located on the world map, as in the northeast area of the country, we literally see sands, noticeably paler than the rest of it. Three Houses. Going all the way back to Three Houses' first official trailer, it features a battle scene from Chapter 5. The Crest Stone of Gautier weapon is used by Miklon's monster form and has the brawling weapon icon, which, funny enough, is actually what Crest Stone weapons are qualified as internally. So basically, they just didn't have a Crest Stone icon ready yet. As an aside, this explains why the skill Fistbreaker ended up being unused in the game. Fistbreaker was originally supposed to be the ability attained after reaching B rank in bows until it wasn't. But what is equal parts hilarious and ridiculous is that if you assign this skill to a character via hacking, it actually activates against monster weapons. I suppose Koei Tecmo thought we'd never find out. Would it have really been that hard to just make a new weapon type for their weapons? Echoes. In both Gaiden and Echoes, enemies could drop all kinds of weapons and items. In Gaiden, the Shooting Star Lance, which became the Astroblade in Echoes, had a drop rate of 0.014% or 1 in 7,000 from gargoyles. In Echoes, the Astroblade could be dropped by not only gargoyles, but their strong variants and Garudas. While the strong gargoyle and Garuda drop rate was higher than 0.014, the drop rate for gargoyles specifically has the lowest rate in the entire game, 0.01. or 1 in 10,000. Fates. In Fates, when a weapon is missing their model, it defaults them in-game to bronze weapons and the fire spell if it happened to be magic. If you've ever used the following weapons, the Bamboo Yumi, Caltrop, Harp Yumi, Rinka's Club, Sidelong Yumi, or Robin's Primer, and thought, hey, these don't look very special, it's because the developers incorrectly assigned models to non-existent IDs, and they never fixed it for the entirety of the game's lifespan. Luckily though, Fire Emblem modder Moonling reassigned them and released a patch to fix their display. Awakening. The child units' birthdays are the dates of all past Fire Emblem game releases. Chronically, they are Severa January 21st, the release date of Mystery of the Emblem and the cartridge version of Thracia 776, Brady February 22nd, the Japanese release of Radiant Dawn, Yarn March 14th, the Japanese release date of Gaiden and the European release date of Radiant Dawn, Na March 29th, the Japanese release date of Binding Blade, Lucina April 20th, which is a big one, the Japanese release date of Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, Path of Radiance, and also the Australian release date of Awakening, Laurent April 25th, the Japanese release date of Blazing Sword, Cynthia, May 14th, the Japanese release date of Genealogy of the Holy War, Owain, July 15th, the Japanese release date of New Mystery of the Emblem, Inigo, August 7th, the Japanese release date of Shadow Dragon, Jerome, September 1st, the Japanese release date of the Nintendo Power version of Thracia 776, Kiel, September 29th, the second day of the first broadcast of the first episode of Arcanea Saga for the broadcast to Teleview, and Noir, October 7th, the Japanese release date of Sacred Stones. Parent characters also share this trend in Longku, Aversa, Riken, and Sully. New Mystery of the Emblem. In every other Fire Emblem game, Ballistas had a movement stat. It wasn't much, but it wasn't zero. In New Mystery, it is stated by Beck that the reason why Ballistas stopped being able to move was because the oil required from an unnamed fruit disappeared after the last war. It is the story reason why he is on horseback now and why the other ballistician from FE1 and 11, Jake, is a warrior. Shadow Dragon. Every Gaiden chapter requirement requires unit death. In War's Grip, in order to reach this chapter, the player must have 15 or fewer units alive at the end of chapter 6. You can also recruit Athena. A Trader's Worth, in order to reach this chapter, the player must have 15 or fewer units alive at the end of chapter 12, and you can also recruit Horus. Helena Castle's the same thing at the end of chapter 17, and you can also recruit Etzel. In the Lair of Fire, the same rules applied, and you can also recruit Emir. And in the Altar Spire, in order to reach this chapter, the player must complete chapter 24 with Tiki dead and the falchion not in their possession. It is therefore impossible to complete a 100% recruitment and deathless run of Shadow Dragon. They were intended to throw a bone to the player if they kept losing units, and 24X is designed to be a failsafe to damage Medeus, as Nagi gives you the replacement falchion, which is weaker than the true falchion in every way. Radiant Dawn. When Ike and the Black Knight meet once again in battle, the Black Knight reveals he let Ike win in their final battle from Path of Radiance because he deemed he wasn't at his full strength yet, so he purposely threw that fight. He did this mainly to feel the satisfaction of finally surpassing Grail, Ike's father and his previous teacher, which he had been previously unable to feel beforehand, through a more experienced Ike. That's how it goes in the localization though. In the Japanese script, the Black Knight mentions the reason he lost that fight in the previous game was because his warp powder malfunctioned. The Japanese script says, "Not necessarily, as my power to warp sent only my spirit and armor while my physical body stayed behind. This caused a great disparity in my true fighting ability." Path of Radiance. Ike's personality and origins were given inspiration and confidence that the idea of a mercenary over a prince boy would work, thanks to Hector's popularity in Blazing Sword. When Kaneda asked the staff what they wanted for a main character, they said, "We want a protagonist that men can empathize with." And hilariously, the inspiration to break the norm extended to this game's Jagan archetype, Titania, who, per Horikawa, was made into a beautiful big sister type at the strong request of male staff. Additionally, it was Higuchi's personal request that she was given thick braids. Sacred Stones. Fire Emblem, like many games, had occasional promotional events. The Juna Fruit was one such item. It was only accessible from a Japanese promotional event called Jump Festa in late 2004. This item could be transferred via link cable once per save file. The item description is as follows. Permanently reduces user's level by 1 to 5, only usable by units level 10 or higher. There was never a North American or European event that could give it, so unbeknownst to non-Japanese player, one of the strongest items in the game was hiding in the game's data, never to be acquired. Without the event, there are no legitimate means to acquire the item. Blazing Sword. Did you ever wonder why Pegasus Knights were always female units only? Well, in Blazing Sword, in Farina's support with Carla, she explains precisely why that is. Ilia is a mercantile country, and its greatest exports are its soldiers. Here, Pegasi will only allow women to ride them. This rule, combined with Ilia's snowy climate, defines Ilian society. Since men cannot fight with Pegasi, they are limited to a grounded knights division that even then, according to Farina, they do not contribute much beyond digging stables out in snowstorms. Beyond that, men are the ones tilling the fields. These conditions make women in Ilia the breadwinners. Binding Blade. Binding Blade had a lot of questions going into its development due to Shozo Kaga's departure. Among the many discussions and drafts for the game's initial steps, Roy's look underwent several designs. Initially starting out as a young, energetic-looking kid, he would develop into a more conservatively designed and mature-looking noble. His designs were drawn up in July 2001. The initial drafts and the spiky-haired kid is a vastly different one from the final product in November 2001. As a bonus fact, because of the more energetic and lively initial design, Masahiro Sakurai, creator of Smash Bros., took that personality and placed it into Roy in Melee, only to realize after the game had released that his entire personality shifted into the Marth-esque redhead we know of today. Thracia 776. Did you know that there are actually two official versions of FE5? One is dubbed the Nintendo Power version, and the second one is dubbed the cartridge or ROM version. The Nintendo Power version was the original release on September 1st, 1999 through the Nintendo Power service, not to be confused with the magazine. To quote Reddit user Skelezomperman, it was a service in which consumers could buy a reusable Nintendo Power cartridge and take it to participating department stores to have new games written onto the cartridge. A physical cartridge version was later released on January 21st, 2000, which has the distinction of being the final official physical cartridge release on the Super Famicom. The known differences between the two versions are its copyright notices, rankings were expanded giving players the chance to reach S, SS, and SSS rank, a bug fix related to leveling past max, which would immediately reset to its max, cavalry effective weapons applying to mage knights, a new image in the credits, and apparently there are some typo fixes. Genealogy of the Holy War. FE4 is famously known for its story and characters, and as bonus post-game content, FE4's opening movie rewards players for completing the game multiple times with new scenes. There are 15 total battle scenes, meaning you need to beat the game 15 times to see them all. Displaying at random, you get the opportunity to see things told but never shown in the story itself, like Levin versus Manfroy, Holseti helping Levin, Sigurd or Deirdre versus Arbus, and many more. Bonus fact, Radiant Dawn did this as well. Mystery of the Emblem. Every game ever has unused content, and Fire Emblem is of course no exception. But FE3 is the only game with unused music still on the cartridge, with the exception of Path of Radiance's 2, and one of them is Radiant Dawn's Game Over music. In fact, FE3 has 8 tracks placed in the middle of its song list, implying that these were considered for cutscenes of various tones. Some of these are bangers too. What a shame. Gaiden. Gaiden's player manual was filled to the brim with incredibly useful information that one could use to understand this game's antics, from its controls, overworld, combat mechanics, classes, and more. On the topic of classes, it even contained growth rates and stats for almost every single one in the game, not counting the spoilery ones. Interestingly, the developers considered final tier playable classes and a couple monster classes to have bona fide skills, which are listed in the white text in the guide here. Hero or promoted Alm could use bows. Priestess and both Celica's base and promoted class can use both swords and magic. Gold Knights can cross rivers. Bow Knights have 5 range with an unequipped bow. Sage gets plus 5 HP at the beginning of each turn. Saint and Cantor give plus 5 HP to adjacent units at the beginning of each turn. Falco Knights have Slayer. Dread Fighters can promote backwards to villagers at level 10. Gargoyles can crit, and Moguls can create more Moguls. But the only one that isn't actually true is the Barons claiming to have the most HP, because they in fact do not. Baron base HP is 40, tied with Gold, Bow, and even Falcon Knights. This was rectified in Echoes, where Barons were given a whopping 2 more HP, finally doing them justice. Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light. While Fire Emblem is now a highly revered series, it wasn't always that way at the very beginning. At its release, FE1 was criticized for several reasons. Among them, like Kaga mentions in an interview with Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi, is that the game was hard to learn and get into. Meanwhile, the game initially struggled to appeal to strategy game buffs because, due to it being a Nintendo product, it was generally accepted it was meant to be accessible and supposed to be appealing to Nintendo fans, or kids, and thus easy to pick up. So it struggled to find the right appeal from being too simple and being too hard. When Fire Emblem first came out on the Famicom, the early reviews were really harsh. Every game magazine gave it pretty bad scores. There weren't really many games back then that combined the RPG and strategy/simulation genres, you see. It stung to see it get so much criticism for being hard to understand, or for not looking that impressive graphically. For those reasons, the reviews said it felt like some old game from yesteryear. Half a year later though, Nakaji praised Fire Emblem in that column for his Famitsu. That was really when things started turning around, and the sales gradually picked up. For context, Giorgio Nakaji is a well-known and influential Famitsu editor who was popular enough to have a lot of sway for his readers back in the day. And yeah, Fire Emblem's road to success definitely had some potholes, but were it not for Nakaji bolstering more interest in his Fire Emblem column back in 1990, who knows if that would have had any implication for the production of Gaiden or just for the series' life in general. Well folks, that will do it for today's video. This was a really chill video to make, and I honestly needed something relaxing like this to work on. All I hope is that now you learned something fun about the series. This was a combination of new facts that I learned and some of my favorite bits of trivia that I have gone over in the past. My new favorite bit of trivia here is that Thracia 776 had 2 versions of itself and FE3's 8 unused music tracks. The Gaiden fact was pretty funny and extremely obscure. I actually think maybe like 5 people in the world knew that, and I am blessed to have joined that exclusive group. I know I've been absent for the last 6 or so weeks, but I've been going through some life stuff that is finally starting to settle itself out. I'm actually moving out of my city and going closer to my friends and family. So thank you all for supporting me even though I have been absent, and a massive thank you for my patrons whose monthly pledges help me greatly when I'm not feeling the best and I'm unable to produce content. If you want to support my channel, please consider checking out my Patreon down below. And a thankful shout out goes towards my $15 a month Great Lord patrons, who are Based Gumi, Atsi, Verdant Pickle, Manthian, Raven King, Zythid, Kevin the Nerd, Nobu, Saxy, Arkholt, M Farmtown, Adelaide, PHEX44, Kelby, Kobo Redive, Silver-Haired Freak, Prime Fusion, Skyla, and Fur Muzzle. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one. Deuces.